and welcome back to our channel. Today we are going to be doing our final trip review of our 7-night Mexican Riviera sailing on the Navigator of the Seas. We mentioned trip review again, and so Remy has once again joined us to weigh in on us being away from home. This was Raj's first trip out to California. It was my first trip out to California in many, many years. Cole had been there for a conference, I think maybe 3 years ago, but just before the pandemic had set in for work. So we're going to talk through travel, hotel, what we did in San Diego, boarding day, what we thought of the Navigator, the ports, and final thoughts. So with that, we will dive right into travel. So we flew on 2 separate airlines for travel. On the way out, we flew Alaska Airlines. On the way back, we flew JetBlue. Alaska, we flew first class from Boston to San Diego. And the reason we flew first class is because we had some flight credits left over from some canceled travel pre-pandemic, and then had paid to upgrade because the rates were really good. So we had booked that over the phone, and at the time of booking we were told that we would have access to the lounge and some other perks, included bags and all of that. So went ahead and did that. The lounge access was, the policy was changed at some point just before our travel, so we did not get to utilize that, but everything else about the domestic first class experience was pretty good. It's obviously not the same as flying first class internationally, obviously, but I thought the seats were super roomy and great. The meal was pretty good, and the service was top-notch. Charles, especially from Alaska Airlines, you could tell he had kids because he was wonderful with Raj the entire flight, just checking in on him and joking around and talking to him. So that was great. We had a wonderful experience there. JetBlue, we flew economy from LAX to Boston, but again, a great experience there too. We fly JetBlue pretty regularly. We've always had good luck with them. They've always been very accommodating with Raj's special needs. And in both cases, you know, we did the chocolates again. Raj handed out chocolates. The one thing that happened with JetBlue on the way back to LAX that has never happened before is the crew wrote a thank you note to Raj specifically, because he's the one that provided them the chocolates. They were profusely thankful, which was highly unusual in our experience, and it just kind of made us question, you know, whether people are not treating flight attendants well, or at least being polite to them. It was just kind of an unusual, it made us kind of, whoa, what's happening here kind of thing. So if you're flying, be kind to the flight attendants. They're there to get you from one place to the other, and just based on that experience, it felt like they really, they just really appreciated just a gesture of kindness. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add to that. Hi, Rem.
No, I just, it was very over the top in their reaction and their gratitude for us showing our gratitude, and concerned that it's such a rare scenario that warranted such a reaction on their part. So as I would just echo what I had mentioned, be kind. They were all trying to help.
One thing that we did again, because we were flying out of Logan Airport in Boston, is we pre-reserved our parking online and saved, again, over $100. So if you are going to be flying out of Logan and you have the opportunity to do that, I would highly recommend doing that. When we arrived in San Diego, we did rent a car. When I was researching transportation options, there's no good way of shuttling from San Diego to Los Angeles specifically for a cruise transfer. There are a couple of services, but when I asked for estimates, they were coming in over $200 for the 3 of us, and the car rental for the weekend that we were going to be there for the one-way was going to be maybe $50 more for the three of us, and we would have had the flexibility to kind of drive around and do our own thing. So that's what we ended up doing. The car rental facility at San Diego Airport is off-site, so just be mindful of that if you are going to be renting, that you do have to get on a shuttle bus, and it was maybe a 5-minute ride, something like that, to the shuttle facility to get into our car. From there, we headed to our hotel, which was the Hampton Inn, near the waterfront in San Diego. It was about an 8 to 10 minute ride. We arrived like super late at night. I think it was like 11 o'clock at night, something like that. 11:30 at night. It was really late. But the hotel was, we typically stay at Hampton Inns. But they included breakfast. They're right near the waterfront, right in the middle of all the action. The San Diego Cruise Port is right there, so if you're sailing out of San Diego Cruise Port, I thought it would be a great location to do that.
Just walk across the 2 streets, effectively.
The Maritime Museum was right down there. There's a park, waterfront park, that has a children's play area, a bunch of fountains that kids can play in. The reason we flew into San Diego is because the only thing Raj had any interest in doing was the USS Midway. So when we talked about Southern California and all the things to do, you know, we offered Disneyland and we offered Knott's Berry Farm and Hollywood and all of these things, and you know, Raj did some research, and the USS Midway was really what he landed on. Was very, very excited about it, and that's how we landed in San Diego for this particular weekend trip. So we spent the better part of pretty much the entire day there. We did
pretty
a full,
much all of their open hours.
Pretty much. The docents there are amazing. They answered every question he had. It was a wonderful experience there. The other day we were there, you know, we went to La Jolla Cove, met up with some new friends that we made on the Ovation of the Seas from our August Alaska cruise. So met up with Obe and Neelam, and that was a wonderful experience. I know Cole spent a lot of time with them on the Ovation because they were hanging out in the music hall every night. I didn't get that opportunity to meet them and engage with them as much, so it was really nice for me to be able to hang out with them and talk to them. You know, but there was a lot of stuff that we missed doing in San Diego. It's a very, very neat area, and I think we all kind of want to go back. Just Southern California in general, I think, is beautiful, and we'd love to explore it some more. Any other comments? All right. Moving on to boarding day. So, Neelam had warned us, because she lives closer to Los Angeles, that the drive from San Diego, even though mileage-wise doesn't seem too bad because of traffic, that we should allot 2.5 to 3 hours for drive time. So, we ended up leaving on a Monday morning, San Diego, 6:30 in the morning? Something like that. Yeah, 6:30 in the morning on a Monday morning, and it took us about 2.5, almost 3 hours. There's a little bit of traffic that we hit right before LAX. So when we arrived, we went to the shuttle car return facility. They do not allow any rideshare pickups at the rental car return facility. So we had to get on the shuttle bus back to a terminal to get to the rideshare area. What they have done at LAX, it was a first for us, we haven't encountered this at any of the airports that we've been to before, is they have a dedicated area. They've called it LA Exit, which is adjacent to Terminal 1. I believe that's the Southwest Terminal, at least at the time of this recording. And it's really well done. They've marked it pretty well. So Uber, taxi, Lyft, any of those, they have, you know, one section for Uber, another for taxi stands, another for Lyft. So whether you need to grab a rideshare or you are being dropped off by one, you are arriving to that area or being picked up from that one area, and then they have the airport shuttles that are either dropping you off or picking you up, depending on what's happening. So that, I thought, was really well organized. Our driver tried to call you, and you didn't hear the phone ringing because you had it on silent.
Yeah, just a little tip. And we've traveled enough, and I still haven't taken this tip to heart. Either the phone's been in a bag or on silent or a combination. But basically, probably the past 3 or 4 trips, at one point a Lyft driver had tried calling me. It was my Lyft account, my mobile that's associated with that account, and I missed it completely. So just a little tip: have that phone that's that mobile phone that's associated with your account that's making that reservation or made that rideshare order. Have it handy and not muted or something you can watch in case you pick it up. And don't be surprised, it could come from a section of the country that you're not in. Not sure whether it's some sort of voice over IP or something, but I know one time, actually Miami, the call came in from Montana. It was flagged from Montana. Again, this was after the fact because I missed it because I was on mute. But just keep that phone out handy, so in case I need to call and get some additional information or confirmation where you may be, because clearly they're not going to be texting as they're driving.
So we left LAX in our Lyft and headed to port, the port at San Pedro, 100 Swinford Street, and that drive was about 20-30 minutes to get there. We were dropped off. We were in a suite and also had the key. I think at the time, the key on the non-Quantum and non-Oasis class ships, they do not include the internet, even if you stay in a suite. So we purchased the key because I think it was just a couple dollars more per person to do that over just buying the straight internet. And Raj loves the embarkation day lunch, the Chops menu lunch in the main dining room, and the debarkation morning breakfast. So ended up doing that. That line is combined. It's the Suites, Key, and Pinnacle line at that particular terminal. And for the first time that we've experienced this, they handed out stickers for anyone that had the key. So because we had the key, in addition to Suites, they gave us key stickers. I think that was just a way of kind of identifying in the terminal, because another thing that was unusual and different for us at other terminals, if you have the Key, Pinnacle, or Suites, you board first before any of the timed arrivals begin boarding. In this instance, what happened was the Key, Suites, Pinnacle line started moving forward at the same time as the 10:30 a.m. boarding line did. So we also had a 10:30 a.m. boarding time. So, you know, in either case, we could have probably gotten in either line and it would have ended up going at the same time. But that was just something that was different. Security process moved through pretty quickly. We were into the terminal and checked in and seated within 15 minutes. I think we sat for about 5 minutes before they called us up onto the concourse. The only other different thing is that we had to have our picture taken multiple times. That was a first for us. They kept saying that our picture was really dark, and at different checkpoints would take our picture. I felt like it was maybe more they had their iPads on battery saver or something, and the screen darkness was an issue more than our picture itself. So that was just kind of a weird thing. But we were still on the ship probably within a half an hour from the time we arrived at the terminal to the time we set foot on the ship. Anything else about boarding?
Just make sure if rain is in the forecast, or it's going to be cooler than you're comfortable with, dress accordingly, because until they open the areas to start working through security and stuff, you're standing outside uncovered the entire way. And I think that was part of the reason the stickers, there's not a lot of cleared ropes or delineations of the various queues. So inclement weather, you're going to be wet.
For the Navigator itself, it was our very first time on the ship. We'd been booked on it before the pandemic and were canceled multiple times. So we finally made it on. The ship was decorated for the holidays, which was really nice to see that. They do a really great job. I think we were on the Independence last year around the same time. So it's nice to see that. Our cabin, we were in a junior suite again. We love the junior suites on the Voyager class just because extra space, the walk-in closets are really nice, especially traveling more than 2 people. I think the food, I felt like on this sailing, was probably the best that we've had in a while. It was the most consistent across the board, whether it was Windjammer, whether it was MDR for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, El Loco Fresh, Sorrento's, just every venue we went to for food. We had lunch and Playmakers one day, which is an upcharge, but I just felt like the food across the board was very, very consistent. Our servers in the MDR, John and Sajida, were hands down amazing. I don't think that we have had wait staff that have been that amazing since Adventure and Oasis, June 2021
Right.
and October 2021.
Yeah.
So they were wonderful. Any request we had, they accommodated. I have some dietary restrictions because of medications. They made sure that was handled. I love the off-menu Indian food. It's just cool. And so they, even without requesting it, once they knew that, every night there was at least one dish of Indian food sitting on our table waiting for us. It was great service. I think start to finish. They also worked in the Windjammer for lunches, so we would see them during lunches. They walked us around to the gluten-free station where we met John, so you'll see a little clip of that in our C-Day video, where he's kind of waving to everyone. But if you happen to be on the ship and they are your servers, they will take fantastic care of you.
You will be fortunate, and you can always ask to change if you see him next to our next section over or what have you.
Table 419.
Highly recommend.
Yes.
Highly recommend.
Well, and the other thing in the MDR was this was the first time since the Mariner, I think, that they have actually had the servers, the wait staff, like singing and performing and like dancing. Like that, I haven't seen that since the pandemic. And we've been on, 12, 13 cruises since then, since the restart. So that was also...
But not all of the MDRs have...
set up that way.
Yeah,
right.
that have the amazing main staircase that kind of feeds from both sides and kind of lends itself to a little bit.
Yeah, the Voyager class is definitely for sure great in that respect. I think the activities on the Navigator were fantastic. Tiago was the cruise director on this particular sailing. There were amazing dance parties. I don't think we're accustomed to the 70s disco party, pretty much that being the standard across the board, and we started seeing the white party becoming pretty common across the board. We haven't seen the red party so much, but that was on this particular sailing, and the 80s party was super fun. So if you're a child of the 80s like we were, that was very nostalgic. That was great. Also, laser tag, always a fun time. Really enjoyed the fact that, there were different water slides on this one. I know the Riptide and the Blaster water coaster was super fun. Yes,
it's the first time I've done a water slide on a ship, so, and it won't be the last. Whether Raj joins me or not.
Yeah. The ice show, Raji. Ice show. What did we think about the ice show on the Navigator?
Oh, this is serious business. He's putting that Kindle away.
He's putting the Kindle away, so prepare yourselves.
We need four.
We need four. Okay.
Or we could use our words.
We could just use our words. Our words are an option.
Or interpretive dance, whatever.
So, based on his interpretive dance and humming, it was the best show ever. Ice show. Typically, Raj does not put his Kindle away when we're at a show in a Royal Caribbean Theater, ice show, aqua show, whatever it is.
A comedian that he's enjoying.
Right, unless it's like a comedy show that he's actually like having a good time at, he doesn't usually put his Kindle away. He'll just sit there quietly and read. This ice show, not only did he put his Kindle away, he watched the entire thing, and then he and I watched the show again a second time during the week. So that's highly unusual. Yes.
With Dad the second time.
So that, this ice show had drones, which I think engaged his interest a little bit because he loves anything technology related. But I think it was also modern music, and it was just kind of upbeat. So that was great. They had good trivias. Karaoke was fun. We didn't participate again. We watch. We don't participate. But speaking of karaoke, leading into music, if you are going to be on the Navigator in the next few months, go to the pub and make sure you spend time in there listening to Darla Fox because she is amazing. We've seen her perform now a couple of sailings, different ships, and she just continues to blow us away. She's very, very talented, very engaging. You spent more time in the pub than, the two of us did, but yeah.
Yeah, it's the venue that actually has people kind of overflowing out of it at various times of the evening because
she's so funny.
She posts up right and plays right near the edge of the door, so you get a full experience as you walk down promenade, and and it's a lot of people moving around and singing along. Great energy, very talented. Can't say enough about. Big fan. Can't believe she hasn't been discovered to move on up the professional ladder in the music industry, but I suspect it's just a timing thing. But
you'll see some clips of her in our C-Day video if you watch that, and also we have other clips that will be posted shortly here.
She takes requests, and she does have several of her own pieces that she's written, and she performs, and they're really good. I highly recommend asking for those. She doesn't constantly play them. She likes to mix them in around across the evenings, but she has a heck of a large repertoire, versatility. Yeah, wonderful.
So we also, or I, ended up visiting the casino on this trip. We're not typically gamblers, but we have been trying to. We've heard from multiple people on several cruises we've been on so far that we should try to accumulate points for the Casino Royale program because you can earn perks and free cruises and things like that. And just given the frequency with which we have been cruising over the past year, we figured it would be worth trying it. I know Rena and I tried the Learn to Play classes a couple of times on the last 2 sailings, and I can't wrap my head around some of the card games and all the different rules and everything that's involved in that. So I just tried the slot machines. I feel like I did pretty well. I put in $40 into, it was a dancing foo machine close to the schooner bar side, and I won $200 at the end of 3 hours. So,
Watch the walkthrough video.
You may find it, that lucky machine on the corner there, which I thought, I walked away with more than I put in, so that to me was, bonus, so that was good.
Points.
Right. Typically, we avoid the casinos on the ships just because they're typically really, really smoky. This one did not seem to be like at all. I'm usually very sensitive to smoke, but this one wasn't bothersome at all. So check that out if you like to spend time in the casino. The Voom on this ship has been upgraded to Starlink. It was not super speedy, but it was definitely solid and reliable. I was able to work off of the ship and do one Teams call. I think you noticed where we've had issues on different areas of the ship.
Yeah, they must have thrown out some new radios, and there's nowhere near the amount of dead spots that we've experienced on this class of ship. But again, this is the first time on Navigator, so maybe that's an odd assumption. The other thing is the latency on the internet was very low. I mean, most of the time when I would test it periodically, sub 50 milliseconds, sub 40. If you know what I'm talking about, otherwise just move on. But
IT
that's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's helpful for doing video conferencing if you have any sort of technology that's remote that requires any security, cybersecurity routines. Low latency is a good thing.
And then, for a couple of minor issues that we ran into, we didn't go to the next cruise desk to book a cruise. We weren't quite sure, what we wanted to do. So what I ended up doing, I've done this in the past on other ships. I just booked a book later certificate through the app, which I've done in the past without an issue. We typically get an email confirmation with a booking ID that we're able to call the 800 toll-free number and reserve when we're ready within a couple of months. In this instance, by the time we'd gotten home, we had not received an email confirmation. When I called in to the post-cruise guest services, I learned that our confirmation, that basically the reservation hadn't been made. It didn't go through. It wasn't until later that I learned that when you do it through the app, there's a manual process involved on the back end, and someone on the ship from Next Cruise has to physically enter the reservation into the system, and that may not get done 100% of the time. So just be aware that if you do that and you only cruise once or twice a year, and that may be your only opportunity to get a certificate, you may want to go and do the book later certificate in person rather than doing it through the app, just to make sure that you get that confirmation and that it is put through. The only other issue we had, it was a minor issue, minor inconvenience for us. It could have turned into a major issue for the ship. It is an older ship, and older ships tend to have problems. But on the day we were in Puerto Vallarta, there was a water issue, a pipe burst, and they had to shut off water to the entire ship for the day, for a few hours actually. So I think the pipe burst around 3 o'clock or so. And at the time, people were returning from excursions, or they've been on the ship for a while. They're, getting out of the pool, trying to get ready for dinner, and all of a sudden there's no water. You can't flush the toilets, you can't take a shower, can't brush your teeth, the kitchens couldn't cook. I mean, it was cut off to the entire ship, to everybody. Laundry services.
There's some delays in food preparation for dinner stuff, so water's important, clearly.
But they felt it was a safety issue. They had to get it repaired, and it was imperative for them to do it while they were still docked in port, to turn off the water, get the repairs done, and then turn it back on. So by the time we arrived at dinner,
I think we actually left a little bit late the port, an hour or two, which is actually a nice upside because we actually caught a spectacular sunset.
We did.
Leaving the port.
Puerto Vallarta, yeah. It was beautiful, beautiful sailing away from that port. Other than that, I mean, as far as the ship, I think I really enjoyed the ship. This cruise for me felt like, we've been on quite a few cruises in the last 18 months. This one felt like just the demographic, the mix of people just felt a lot friendlier compared to others we've been on. It didn't matter if we were waiting in line to get into the MDR or waiting in line to get into the terminal. Just wherever we were, there was just people that just struck up a conversation and started talking, and that was a little bit different, at least for me, than when we've sailed out of Jersey, like from Bayonne, or even Port Canaveral, Miami, some other places where you do get that element to some extent, but this was like everybody, like, just, it felt super friendly. And I know you met people from all over the country. Raj and I were kind of more localized, where the people that were kind of talking to us were from San Diego, Los Angeles areas. So I was assuming it was kind of more of a West Coast thing.
Well, the people I met were less of that demographic and more Salt Lake City, Connecticut, South Florida, a few folks from the UK. I attributed some of that to the more diverse folks that I encountered, that I spent time with and got to know a little bit from different parts of the country and the world, technically.
I mean, you spent a lot of time on the pool deck.
Yes.
Raj and I, not so much. Pools were good. No issues there.
Yep, warm and salt water.
So you were happy.
Can't beat that. That's the best combination.
Moving on to ports, we had 3 port stops on this particular sailing. So the first was Cabo San Lucas. The sail into Cabo, if you are going to be sailing on the Navigator between November and May, be outside, because you are likely to see whales and more whales. It was an amazing thing to watch from our balcony, just whales breaching out of the water several times. There was a family of whales, so that was amazing. We didn't have an excursion for Cabo, so if you watch that video, you know all about the mistakes we made with Cabo. We would love to go back someday and do a coastal cruise and maybe even explore the city some more. It looked absolutely beautiful. So we'd love to get beyond the port area and explore it.
To pile onto the Cabo
Yeah.
Port has some technical difficulty and wasn't able to capture video of the tinder in from the ship, which you have to take my word from it for it, but it was spectacular. The ridges, the colors, the sea life, the seals that would
Jump on the back of boats.
Yeah, just jump on the back of the back of boats and just kind of ride around. It was amazing, but technical difficulties, we missed it, and always a learning process.
Right. The tender ride itself felt like a bit of an excursion in and of itself, right?
No,
the only thing that would have made it more perfect is if it went down around by the arch. But it doesn't do that because you got to pay extra for that. But yeah, speaking of the tender experience, that was, you'll see from our Cabo Day video that it is a tender port. So that was another reason why we purchased the key, is just to get priority tendering. There were technical difficulties with the tendering process because there's a temporary tender dock that's attached to the ship. That was a little bit precarious. We've never experienced that before, so if you watch the video and can watch that part of it, just make sure you hold on to the hand railings and let them help you. I typically don't like people grabbing onto me and things, but in this case, had they not done that, I probably would have fallen over, because it was really unstable. First time we've experienced that, so.
And it's a protected bay, so I'm guessing winds.
Yep, it was very windy too. Yeah. Our next port was Mazatlan, and we did the lighthouse hike excursion. This was hands down my favorite excursion. This is, we've been doing a lot of traveling in the past year and a half. We've stepped up a lot of the traveling, and this is primarily due to some health issues that I've been experiencing. So our family has prioritized making sure that I get to hit my bucket list. PSA for all the moms out there. Tomorrow is not promised to us. Everyone wants a piece of our time. There's always going to be dishes to be done, and laundry, and PTA meetings, and bake sales, and volunteer events. Everybody needs our time. We need to take care of ourselves. And if you are not feeling well, don't put off seeing the doctor. Don't put off getting answers. And if you know that something doesn't feel right, push for answers. Because the people in your life matter, and you want to be around for them, right? Long term. We made the decision to start traveling some more because of my issues, knowing that I may not get the retirement that we planned for in 10 to 15 years, that I may not have the physical capacity to be able to do some of those things. So we are making a concerted effort for me to be able to do those things now while I'm still relatively capable of doing them. This lighthouse hike was one of the things that, it's supposed to be the tallest lighthouse in North America. Natural elevation. It did say that it was on the shore excursion description. It did say that it was a strenuous excursion. We usually don't pay as much attention as we should to that. Believe it. It was pretty strenuous, but it was offset by the fact that our tour guide, Cristobal, I think was very understanding of the fact that we had people of varying ages and physical abilities. Some of us had limitations, and so he took a lot of breaks along the way, which was very, very helpful. You'll probably notice if you watch the video, I am completely flushed halfway up, and that state doesn't change for me. But I was very happy that I got to do it. It felt like an accomplishment. Because, you know, a few years from now, I don't think that I would have been able to do it. We had someone who was a gentleman who was in his 80s who did the hike. Mid-80s. Tyrone. And it was great because it was a small group excursion, and, you know, everyone was cheering for him, and when he made it up to the top, right, we celebrated all together as a group. I think the fact that it was a small group excursion made it a little extra special, and I thought Cristobal was an amazing
great tour guide. Great information, loved to mix humor in, and did it very well. But yeah, I mean, in every stop, when he noticed that the group was elongating or stretching out, we'd stop and get caught up, catch our breaths, and he'd give us all kinds of great information. I mean, he could easily cover every step of that with good information for the trail, let alone the vistas looking back towards Mazatlan, the coconut grove plantation that was there. Yeah, he definitely made it more comfortable and helped us all be more inclusive in terms of our abilities to be a team.
And then our final port stop was Puerto Vallarta. And this was an interesting port for us because we had a shore excursion booked. It was downtown Mexican Fiesta, so a bit of the old town area with the cultural experience. But where we were docked was very modern looking, right? So that contrast between kind of the old school and the modern was a very interesting dynamic. I thought, I think if we go back, I would love to just spend time, you know, just walking across the street to like where we saw the shopping malls, and like even just walk inside the Sam's Club that was like across the street. Like, what do they sell in a Sam's Club in Puerto Vallarta? Like, it felt very interesting. There's also a beach that's within walking distance right near the port. If we go back, I would, instead of doing a shore excursion, I think I would just like to spend some time walking around and exploring the area, because there was a lot of like movie theaters, restaurants, shops, like all kinds of.
Yeah, and the port is they've definitely put some money. Somebody's put a combination partnership into a really, I would consider high-end compared to most of the other ports, shops and stuff. You know, it's a bit of walking through a mall to get back to the ship by design, but it's air conditioning. There's air conditioning, you know, it's your shade. There's places to grab some cold beverages, hot beverages, food, souvenirs. But it was probably well done. It's a heck of a walk by comparison. It took us by surprise. And then there's actually a shuttle, a tram shuttle that takes you back that last bit around the edge. You can see that in the video.
And it was lively in the morning. Like, from the minute we pulled in, or, you know, were docked and pulled open the balcony door, they had a little mariachi band playing music, and Raj was, like, out there. It was the first port where he was super jazzed to, let's get out and start the day. Like, and he's not usually like that. So it was interesting to have that be the start to our day.
Cool vibe to start with.
Yes. The excursion itself, I felt like, was just okay. For me, I'm not a shopper, so any excursion that includes like shopping stops and multiple shopping stops, it's just kind of like, oh, do we have to do this? You know, great for anyone that loves to shop and bargain and do all that stuff. I'm not one of those people, so Raj and I typically pull out our Kindles and, you know, we're reading. While other people are getting the sales presentation and shopping. But other than that, I thought the fiesta part, like the cultural experience with the dancing and everything, was great.
I don't drink much alcohol. I mean,
but the tequila was delicious.
But the tequila
8 rounds of tequila. Little medicine sort of cups. Appreciate the lady who was heavy pouring, adjusting for my size. That was nice of her. But yeah, quite delicious. Went through the spectrum from the least expensive to the most expensive, of course. And the flavored
and
tequilas.
Some flavored ones, and they were all very delicious. I have a new appreciation for tequila. It's not something I normally would order if I'm going to have an adult beverage, but part was very interesting, but, you know, Pona doesn't drink alcohol.
So I just handed it over to him.
So, I found it to be a nice educational. It was a highly enthusiastic presentation. That was nice. Yeah. So, you know, check the video out on that one for more details and more experience.
So, related to the ports, one of the challenges was all the time changes on this sailing. So, we had a huge time change going East Coast to West Coast. So, there was a 3-hour shift there. And then there were 2 time changes on the way down, and then 2 time changes on the way back up before we had another time change when we flew back home. So, it was very confusing for a while, and our devices, like, you can't rely on the automatic updates because the ship's time doesn't necessarily match up to the time that, you know, our watches or phones would automatically set themselves to. I think you ended up buying like a little digital standalone battery operated clock.
Alarm clock. And that was so we could actually match it to the ship time. Have some sort of reference in the room, because, as you know, there's not really, other than the TV, even I guess the most modern LCD panels do have time, but that's once in a while you like to know what time it is, middle of the night or what have you, or so it solved a couple of problems. I found to be a very good investment of less than $10.
One other issue we ran into is our last cruise was in Europe, where we did not really need to use cash for anything. So if we needed to go into a shop and buy a bottle of water, we could, you know, run a card for that. That was not the case with this particular cruise. We did not bring as much cash, and we also did not exchange any cash, any US dollars for pesos in advance. So those were 2 things that, you know, if we were to do this type of sailing in the future, we would probably do those 2 things differently. We would probably exchange some money for pesos in advance, and also bring more cash than we did this time around. Because in Cabo, for example, when we were trying to find an excursion around the port area, the only shore excursion provider that really accepted credit cards was like the cage diving shark one, because that was super expensive. But some of the smaller outfits, like just to take like a glass bottom boat tour out to where the arch is, for example, like they would only take cash. And so they did have ATMs in the port area, you know, but as I said in that Cabo video, we have had a couple of instances where after withdrawing cash from an ATM, a foreign ATM, we've had some fraudulent transactions on our account, and so we just stopped doing that a while ago. Someone in the casino on this sailing had said that it is what they have done in the past is they have transferred money on a slot machine. They've transferred money from their onboard account to the machine. They've played a little bit, and then they've cashed out the voucher and gone to the cashier and walked away with cash in hand. And so they said, you know, if you're in a bind and you really need cash and you're afraid to use the ATM, that's one way of getting money out. They said it's kind of frowned upon to do it that way if you're not actually playing the money in the casino, but
you're not going to get pesos. You're going to get US dollars.
You're going to get US dollars from the cashier. And then guest services will, I didn't realize this in advance, but guest services does have some pesos on board, and they will exchange those at whatever the rate happens to be. So just, you know, for people that might be boarding, something to keep in mind. Other than that, final thoughts. I would love to do another sailing on this ship, and honestly another sailing out of California on this ship or any other, you know, Royal Caribbean ship. I hope that Royal Caribbean brings other ships out to the West Coast, because I think it's a beautiful area. I'd love to explore it some more. They had some other itineraries that included Ensenada and Catalina Island that looked interesting. It's just being on the East Coast, it's a bit of a production to get out to the West Coast. So,
especially these days with the way air travel's going, inflated cost and just the logistics and the problems. It's a whole other metric that you have to consider that was less of a concern months ago, 6 months ago. hopefully that will get better. But yeah, no, I would definitely like to do this or a similar itinerary out of San Pedro. Definitely would like to get back to San Diego in the near future. But and explore these ports that we hit in a little bit different fashion would be very interesting and very I would look forward to.
Is there anything you would like to say as a final thought about our navigator sailing in California, San Diego, the Midway, anything? All right. And with that, you have it. We'll say thanks for watching. Bye.
Bye bye.